Hi guys! Today I'll show you how to sew this tall toiletry bag. I haven't really shared this with you before, but sewing is something I've been doing for years. I've been sewing for almost like 8 years now, and over the years I've learned a lot, especially when it comes to making bags. So I thought it would be fun to start sharing some of that knowledge with you, and I hope you'll find these tips helpful. So the first step is to print the pattern on A4 or US letter paper. Make sure you're printing it at 100% scale, and if everything printed correctly, your pages should look like this, with trim margins around the edges. And also, before cutting anything out, don't forget to check the scale guide. This pattern only has two pieces, the main body piece and the zipper top end piece. And since I'm going to quilt the outer pieces, I'm cutting my two outer pieces and the wording about 2-3 centimeters larger than the paper pattern. We leave this extra space because quilting tends to shrink the fabric down a little bit. I'm also cutting the zip top ends from my outer fabric, and don't forget to cut your zipper. Keep in mind that the zipper length is different for each size, so make sure to check the pattern before cutting. And for the lining, cut the pieces exactly to the size of the paper pattern. Now I'm marking my quilted lines. I'm using this metal ruler and my lines will be spaced about 2.5 centimeters apart. Then we are going to stitch our quilted design, joining the outer and the wording together. I use a mid to long length stitch to this, and it's set in 4 on my sewing machine. Once you've finished all of your quilting, give it a really good press. I also decided to add interfacing to my zipper top ends. This is totally optional, but I wanted them to be a little more structured. And while you are at the iron board, make sure to also press your lining pieces. And then we can place the paper pattern piece back on top. Line it up using the center marks so your quilted lines stay nice and straight. Then trace around the pattern. And before cutting it out, I usually make 2 rows of stitching just inside the traced line. This helps secure the quilting so nothing shifts or comes undone later. Just make sure your stitching stays within the seam allowance. Once that's done, go ahead and cut out the pieces along the traced line. And now let's prepare the zipper. First, add the zipper pull. Then place the zipper top ends right sides together with the zipper ends. Pin them together and sew using a 1 cm seam allowance. Next, fold the top over. Then fold it again like this to cover the raw edge and the previous seam. Pin everything in place and make a top stitch along this edge closer to the zip. Now the zipper is all ready to go. Mark the center on all of your pieces. You can use the paper pattern for this or simply fold it in half and make a tiny notch. I'm also marking the wrong side of my lining pieces just to make it easier for you to see which side it is. And now let's attach the zipper. First, mark the zipper placement notches on both outer pieces. Place the zipper and outer piece right sides together, matching the center marks and side notches. So once you're at your sewing machine, we start sewing at the zipper top end, and we are going to be sewing along with a small seam allowance, just to hold everything in place. And then get your lining piece and put your lining fabric face down as well, so that the two fabric pieces are right sides together. Add a few pins across the edge and join all 3 layers together with a 1 cm seam allowance. Don't forget to move the zipper pull out of the way as you sew past it. Lift your foot up and open or close the zip as needed. Do the same on the other side of the zipper, making sure all of your center marks and side notches line up. Once you've attached both sides of the zip, we're going to top stitch along this seam just to finish it. Just make sure you're pulling the fabric so that it's nice and even on both sides. And repeat the same for the other side. And then we're going to place both of the quilted pieces right sides facing and the lining pieces right sides too. Now match the side seam of the corner where the zip end is. Add some pins, stitch that corner and check that everything lines up. And then go and do the same on the other side. Before we do the next step, you need to make sure you open the zipper. And then you can go ahead and pin everything in place, so everything is right sides together. And then we are going to stitch all the way around the edge, but we are going to leave a gap in the lining so we can turn the bag through at the end. Then we are going to stitch all the way around with the usual 1 cm seam allowance. Now let's make the boxy part of the base of the bag. Find your corner and then we're going to pull the fabric like this so that it's sitting flat, and the side and the bottom seam should be sitting parallel to each other. I know a lot of people like to make like a iron open seam here, like this, but honestly I never get perfectly matching seams that way. So this is what works best for me. I bring the seams together like this, I press or fold it, in my case, the seam allowances on opposite directions, making sure they line up really nicely, then pin and sew across with a 1 cm seam allowance. And this really gives me a much cleaner seam. Once you've done the corner, you can go and repeat it to the other 3 corners, doing exactly the same for the outer and the lining. We're almost done. Now all that's left is to turn the bag right side out through the hole in the lining. Check that all of the corners look even, and then we can pull the lining out of the bag. Find that hole and pin it shut, and then make an edge stitch along there, closing up the hole. And then just place the lining back inside of the bag. And that's it. Here are both sides together side by side for comparison, and you can find the free pattern linked in the description down below, and it already includes 2 different bag sizes. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you again in my next video.